All right, here we go then. We are going to get started in 3, 2, 1.
I am the way into the city of woe. I am the way into eternal pain. I am the way to go among the lost. Before me, there were no created things, but those that last forever. As do I! Abandon all hope, you who are about to enter here. You are now in the presence of the motherfucking king!
Okay, ready or go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome and hello. This is Wait You Haven't Seen. It's a show where we talk about movies and specifically talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 223. And our movie this week is John Wick Chapter 4. And joining me to talk about it, because neither one of us had seen it yet, it's Searanex. Searanex, how you doing?
Doing very, very well. And also, a little bit of a disclaimer before we get started here. I do, in fact, like other movies other than John Wick. So I know I've been on here for the last 3 chapters, but there are other movies that I like other than this. But it's a theme now. So
yeah, we had a thing going on, and it was one of those where, all right, so real quick, straight at the outset, this movie is very new. It just came out this year, 2023. So if you are listening to this in 2023 and you do not want to be spoiled on what happened in John Wick Chapter 4, go back, listen to any of the 222 backlogged episodes of Wait You Haven't Seen, watch the movie, and then come back. It's worth it, but just to let you know, we are going to be spoiling a whole lot. We're going to be talking about this movie, so enjoy that. But this was a thing where we had talked about this when you came on a few months back for John Wick Chapter 3. We were like, we should do this because Chapter 4 is coming out soon. And then it was like immediately after that was just messages coming back and forth. Usually you messaging me every couple of weeks, hey, when are we going to do Chapter 4? You want to do Chapter 4 yet? Hey, when are we going to do Chapter? And I was like, we're going to do Chapter 4. I wanted a little bit of breathing room in there. But like I was right with you in like wanting to do this and wanting to see the movie. So,
and see what the moral of the story is: you need to stop saying, "Hey, you can welcome back anytime," because I will take you at your word and ask to come back.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So, John Wick Chapter 4. So you and I have talked chapters 2, 3, and now we'll be talking 4. I did do the first movie with Monica, my co-host on Gore, and Scottier back a couple of years ago, and I have enjoyed the hell out of all these John Wick movies, and they just keep getting more and more ridiculous, and I love them for that. So I think first things first, I want to get your take. What did you think of it overall? Just you got done watching it for that first time, and just your immediate takeaway was John Wick Chapter 4. Man, that was...
At first, I don't know. It's a little bit mixed because actually I have watched it twice now. I watched it once in theater and watched it a little bit earlier today. But after the first watch through, I was a little hesitant about it because it does go in that escalation of action that we were talking about with Chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
It takes it even further. The second watch through, I just kind of parked my brain a little bit more. Just not by much, but a little bit more, and just enjoyed the set pieces, which there are some amazing set pieces in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And just kind of parked it a little bit, enjoyed the set pieces, and had a much better time with this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it's probably... I'd probably have to say still my favorite is number 2.
Okay.
But then second place is like tied with this and number 1.
That's a fair assessment. I, like you, very much enjoyed the movie. I have a couple of nitpicks we'll get to. They're minor in terms of like enjoyment of the movie, but they're there and they should be talked about. But overall, this was very good. It was a very good conclusion to a story arc that they started in Chapter 1. in John Wick, which I'm going to say that of the four, the first movie is still my favorite, and I think it's just because it introduced me to this character in this world, and it's sort of like there's, and we talked about this during chapter 3, there's those movies that come along that kind of, even if they're not the first one to do a thing, they help to level set, reinvent a genre, and kind of give you what movie is capable of. And in this case, John Wick really changed how we viewed a lot of action films, and the action films that came after it owe so much to John Wick because of the things that it did. Just like, Casino Royale did that for the Bond films. I think that the Bourne Identity did that for a lot of action films in the early 2000s, for good or ill. It really set the tone and kind of broke the mold in terms of what you were doing with your action movies at that time. And so for me, like, that first movie is so great. But what they did with Chapter 4 and what they continue to do with each iteration of John Wick is give us something new. Give us something that the movies hadn't done yet. And they kept getting bigger. This is the biggest of them all by far in terms of scope and length.
Yeah, this one's actually over an hour longer than the original.
Yeah.
Just shy of 3. And I actually read on the trivia that the original cut of this was almost 4 hours long.
Yeah.
That they had to cut it down to 169 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And here's what I will say. My only, and it's not so much a complaint, but it is a nitpick of the movie, is that length. In that you could get across a lot of the same story in a shorter film. There are definitely moments and points in this film that you're like, wow, did we need that in service of the story that we're telling? And the answer is typically no. Like, did we need any of the stuff that happened in Japan, in Osaka? Not really. None of that really. It gives us one minor backstory piece with him and Kane, and the fact that who we'll get to casting and all of that, but it gives us one minor bit of kind of backstory that ties it together. But really, honestly, if you took everything in Osaka and cut it out of the movie, there's almost no change to the narrative that's going on. Now, having said that, I also don't want to lose any of the stuff in Osaka because it was awesome and it had great characters in it and great performances. So it's just one of those where it's really tough. Like, it's always difficult to figure out what you can and can't lose. And I think it was 225 minutes was the original cut of this, which is insane to think about. And at that point, you'd almost have to cut it into 2 movies. And you could have even taken this and cut it into 2 different movies, and it would have been fine. I'm glad that they didn't do that. I don't hate that movies are doing this, right? Because in the end, what I want is a good story. So, like, a 3-hour movie doesn't bother me, as long as the pacing is good. Taking a movie and breaking it into 2 parts, whether it's Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, or Dune Part 1, Part 2, or, insert your movie here. The last 2 Harry Potter movies getting split, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't bother me so much because what they're trying to do is tell the best story that they can.
Yeah.
It's just like, this one was towing that line. Do you split it into 2 movies? Do you make it one 3-hour movie? I even think, like, the opening of this is so good that from the moment where the Bowery King blows the match out, and we get that, it's that Lawrence of Arabia opening, right? It's almost shot for shot. He blows that match out, and then you get the rising sun and the horsemen coming. All of that could get cut, and it doesn't change the movie at all, because we don't necessarily need to see John go after the Elder the way that he did and shoot him.
Well, to a certain degree, but also it's kind of the catalyst. It's like the final straw for the High Table to start really ramping up everything against John Wick, and not only going against him, but everyone associated with him.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like that was the inciting moment.
Yes,
so,
it is.
I mean,
I feel like you could have, if that got cut, and you don't necessarily
there's
see
other
all
ways
that.
of doing it.
then you've got another 10 minutes, say, cut out of your movie that looks gorgeous. And again, I don't want to lose any of that because they actually, like, they shot that scene with the elder was shot in a location. That's all real. That's a real backdrop that was, I think it was the same is used in Lawrence of Arabia. And
I wouldn't be surprised.
but it's gorgeous. It looks amazing, and it does set a tone. It's just, then there's like the editor part of my brain that's like, well, yeah, but you could trim that, and it's going to be a little bit more accessible for more people. But again, nitpicking.
Yeah, again, it's like, but it's kind of, it's like, what side of the equation do you try to cater to? Either the editing side, making it super concise storytelling, but then you start losing these really good set pieces that aren't necessarily there to further the story as much as to look really badass.
Mm-hmm.
Which above all else, that is something that this movie accomplishes, is just there's so many badass moments.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do they necessarily serve the story very well? Not necessarily, but it's just cool to watch.
It very much is. And really, when you think about the John Wick series, all 4 of the movies do that, right? There's so many times where you could trim a set piece action sequence gunfight down by 25, 30, 35%. You could shave off of it, and it would still give you the same effect. It would give you the same storytelling, but it would be a little bit shorter because some of them do go on quite a ways. But man, when they're going, they look good. Like we talked about that with Chapter 3 and that whole fight with Halle Berry and the dogs and all that, where it just like that scene just kept going and going and going, and you're like, by the end of it, you're tired just watching it.
Yeah. And there's definitely, they took that, and there's several moments in this movie that do that. Like literally the last almost hour of the movie is just fight to fight to fight to fight, and it's glorious in my mind.
So,
I thought that was one of the
I
thought it was amazing.
And I've seen like on the internet the meme of well, if John Wick, taking fictional characters and making them D&D characters, what class would they be? What would their stats be? All that kind of stuff. John Wick is a barbarian, right? He's a straight up fighter barbarian, and he's got like a 35 con score. Like his constitution is just unworldly because that man takes more punishment than anything should ever be able to take. Like we ended Chapter 3, he fell off a building.
Yeah.
Not a small building. He fell off a building.
Yeah. Although I have been actually recently, there's a YouTube channel called like part of the Theorists Network. Film theorists actually did a theory on John Wick and how that almost that whole fall is actually survivable. Almost. There's the one part where he takes the railing to the back.
Oh yeah.
That probably would have paralyzed him.
Oh, I'm sure. It should have. Down. Yeah. A normal human being.
Theoretically, the rest of that fall there's a chance he could survive that. But still,
what it is, and it's the reason, like, he's like a level 30 barbarian because he can stay in his rage state forever. He doesn't have to come out of rage, and so he's just invulnerable to normal injuries at that point, and his stamina goes through the roof. When it finally ends and he comes out of rage, he's done. He's useless for a little while, which is why this movie took place 8 months after the last one. But like that's
actually
just
about 6 months, something like that.
Okay.
According to an interview, Chad Stahelski said it was about 6 months. He said that the whole series takes about 8 months.
Oh, okay.
Or something like that.
But
so
it's just
there's a little bit of discrepancy there, but
it was just one of those where I was just, as I'm watching this, I'm like, man, this dude she's just a Timex watch. He takes a licking and just keeps on going. He does not quit.
Yeah.
And there's a great shot, there's a great shot of Keanu Reeves, and we're going to get to some of these set pieces because I want to give each one of them kind of their own due. But the shot where he gets to the bottom of the stairs and he looks up the stairs, and there's a quote from Stahelski saying, yeah, that look is like 50% John Wick and 50% Keanu Reeves, because it's the 222 stairs, And I'm just like, oh, my
Yeah.
quads already hurt thinking about going up those stairs,
Yeah.
just walking them. And he's and
Yeah.
like, and you know at that point, that scene, he's like, he's not just walking up these stairs.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, we're doing that now, because we haven't had
Yeah.
enough amazing set pieces by that point in the movie. But do we want to talk the set pieces first, or do we want to talk cast?
I think we could probably talk cast first, and then
Okay.
start going through the different set pieces.
I mean, it all starts and stops with Keanu Reeves, John Wick.
Yeah.
Just once again, perfect in this role, and he actually cut a lot of dialogue out of this. He only has like three.
Yeah.
What is it? He
380
says,
words.
yeah, which is just silly to think in a
Yeah.
3-hour movie, 2 hours and 52 minutes, of which if you take the say 8 to 10 minutes of credits out of the end, we'll give them that, and we'll say 2 hours and 40 minutes of movie, and the man says 380 words.
Yeah, and probably about 20% of them are yeah.
Exactly. But Keanu knows, like, he understands what he is as an actor. I think he kind of figured that out at some point, that he is very much the neutral mask, and John Wick as a character is very much that, and the stoicism is a big part of John Wick's character too. So it's sort of like Edward Scissorhands, and taking a lot of the dialogue out of that for Johnny Depp and not making him very talkative made the performance more impactful. And I think the fewer words that John says, the better, because he can say a lot with a look, but also so much of John Wick as a character is the mythos of John Wick. It's the Baba Yaga. It's what everyone else thinks of him.
Or Baby Yaga.
Yeah, or Baby Yaga.
Ever since you showed me that, it's like that's what it's been called in my head ever since. Baby Yaga. Because it just sounds funny. Anyway.
But it's like so much of that character is that, right? It's what other people refer to him as and talk about him. So to have him be, not talk a whole lot works, and it works better, I think, for the character. And Keanu knows that, and so he's willing to cut a lot of lines of his dialogue, which many actors would not want to do. But then he's also going to put so much effort into the physicality of the role and the stunt work, and want to be on screen for all that. Very much like, it's the same thing that Tom Cruise does in a lot of his action stuff, where he's more than willing to hang off the side of an airplane as it takes off from a runway to sell the shot, because it's going to look better if you know it's him there. There are shots in this movie, I had notes to myself, like, it's great when you see driving shots and it's a long take and you see Keanu behind the wheel, because he's not driving 100% of the time, but when he is behind the wheel and you can see that. We talked about it with the previous movies, all those long takes and shots that are wide of the fights, and it's Keanu Reeves there. That goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing about this whole series that makes it so iconic now, is that there's so many, like, one of the set pieces I want to get into is one of those long takes that later on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always these long takes that they have where you clearly see everything that's happening, and it's all so concise and just chef's kiss. Because that's one thing that I very much dislike about a lot of action movies, is when they just do so much stuff, or like do camera tricks or shaky cam or whatever, and you don't get to see what they actually do.
Mm-hmm.
You just see a bunch of things flying and then people falling over. This one, you see every stab, you see every shot, you see every punch, you see every action. I love that about this kind of action. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of drawn to this series in general.
Good action will let you, inform you, and keep you in the geography of the scene, and where everything and everyone is in the scene, whether that is American or a lot of Hong Kong action is very good at keeping. There was a great breakdown I saw. I want to say it's not Every Frame a Painting on YouTube, but there's another breakdown, and it was Jackie Chan, and it was comparing the differences of Jackie Chan's Hong Kong films and some of his American stuff, or just American action cinema in general, and the differences between like a good action scene in a Jackie Chan movie shows you where Jackie is, where the antagonist or the thing that's going to hurt him is, and where things are in the background, and you see all of those in every shot. And very rarely do you get those cut-ins or those cutaways or those close-ups on something and then have to try and piece that together in your head. The antithesis being, say, the well-over-memed thing from Taken, I think, 2, of Liam Neeson jumping the fence, and there's 17 cuts in like 3 seconds. And, and the difference there, like, not everything has to be a wide shot single take, but you want to know where everything is in relation to each other. John Woo was always really good at doing that with his action set pieces. Anything Jackie Chan was in, whether it was directed by Yuen Ping or Sammo Hung or Jackie himself, they always did such a good job of making sure you knew where everyone was at any point. Michael Bay early on was a lot better at that. There was a period of time where he got a little muddy, and some of his action was a little tough to follow in some of the later Transformers films, but like The Rock, The Island, Bad Boys, you usually are able to follow that action really well. And his is more of an American style, but the same rules applied. I remember seeing, it was Clash of the Titans, the remake that came out in whatever it was, late 2000s, early 2010s. And story issues I had aside with that movie, one of my problems was there were set pieces where I didn't know what was going on or where anyone was in relation to anyone else, and I got confused. And if I'm getting confused by that stuff going on in an action scene, that's bad, because I can typically follow them pretty well.
Yeah.
That was my problem with The Bourne Supremacy, was it relied too much on shaky cam, but it was shaky cam that was too up close. Bourne Ultimatum, Paul Greengrass kind of figured it out, pulled the camera back a little bit, and at least let us kind of understand, again, the geography of the scene. And that's important. Whether it's a wide open scene like in the streets of Paris, or it's this really condensed thing like a fight in a bathroom in Bourne Ultimatum, you need to know where all your players are in relation to each other at any time. And Chad Stahelski understands that. And so him and his choreographers and the stunt teams, whether it's Donnie Yen's stunt team or Keanu's team or whoever, all these people figure this out. And so it's really, really good. And Keanu, again, because he puts so much dedication into the physical part of it and wants to be on screen for that, you're seeing all of that come out. And so it makes you believe that he is John Wick, that he is, because you can see him doing these things. It's just that much better.
Yeah. Yeah, it is impressive, like how much he takes onto himself. Like I know which car scene you're talking about, and that is very impressive. Not only because the doors of the car are busted off, so you can clearly see him. He's driving one-handed, firing one-handed, and he's legit doing it for like not just a quick take, but it's like a multiple tracking shot. It really is impressive.
That drift shot where he's drifting around the other cars was so good, because it was one of those where my movie watching brain keeps waiting for the cut, right? Because
and it doesn't show up.
Yeah, you've seen that how many times in movies where the car starts to power slide and starts to drift, and then you cut away, you do an insert of somebody's reaction to it, or you get another angle of what's going on to get coverage. No, this was the one shot tracking all the way around. I'm like, this is beautiful, because it just kept going.
Yeah.
And
again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We've got a lot of cast to get to still.
Oh, we do. Look, we're going to be gushing about this movie a lot. I just have that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Bottom line, this movie is impressive.
It's very impressive. I mean, you bring back Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King. And just like the last couple movies, he doesn't have a ton of screen time, but man, when he's on screen, Fishburne was having fun. He was having a blast as this character. And I loved it. I loved every second. From that opening that I played at the top where he's quoting Dante's Inferno as he's walking in. And I got a couple of clips I'll play later on of him. And it was great. He shows up in Paris. It's the first time you see him outside of New York, which I loved.
Yeah.
Ian McShane back as Winston. And Ian McShane he just brings. There's so many actors in this that bring a level of gravitas that is impressive, and McShane has that because we've seen both him as an actor and him in this character play kind of both sides of the fence, be pro and antagonist. You're never quite sure where he's coming from, and it works so well.
He always has an angle.
Yes, and Ian McShane is perfect for that because you kind of don't ever 100% trust him. Even if he's playing the good guy, you're like, yeah, but I don't know. It's like watching Anthony Hopkins. You're always worried. Ever since Silence of the Lambs, you're worried Anthony Hopkins is going to flip on you at some point and like try to eat you. And it's, he was just so good at that.
Yeah. It's almost like Winston, Ian McShane is almost the antithesis of Keanu Reeves when you were describing it, because Keanu Reeves can tell you a lot with his expression. With Ian McShane, he can hide a lot with his expression.
Yes.
It's like you can't really tell what's going to happen with him.
You got a little it's like the Sphinx. I can't read you. I don't know what's going on. What's going on behind that face? And plus, like he delivers lines like nobody.
Oh yeah.
Lance Reddick comes back as Sharon. I was really hoping he was in the movie more. That was the bummer. It was the gut punch in the beginning, extra hard because of the fact that Lance Reddick passed away 2 weeks before this movie debuted.
Yeah, this got put on my unfortunate list because there's no way to have predicted this or anything like that. But yeah, just the fact that Sharon died the way that he did. Again, we already did our spoiler alert, so whatever.
Yeah.
The
it's
way
too late now.
The way that he died in the movie, and the fact that it's like it with Lance Reddick passing away the way he did, it's just unfortunate. It's like it's one of those things you wish you had a time machine and it's like, oh, let's change something about this.
Well, and the thing is, like, even if Lance Reddick doesn't pass away, it's still such a bummer for that character that to go that early. But what it does do is it gives us as an audience, without John Wick having to be involved, now we've got that sort of, John's the puppy at the beginning of the first movie, or his wife, those catalysts for like him to go on this crusade. Sharon gets killed like that, and it's so needless and it's unexpected,
which is the point.
Yes, and it's exactly what is supposed to happen there. And it's just I hoped that he was in the movie more and like they gave him more of a role in this, but at the same time he had such an important moment to play in it. And it's it's just one of those where there's certain times where characters get offed in a movie that is unexpected or just happens very quickly, and like it happens so fast in this you barely have time to react to it.
Yeah, that was definitely unexpected, because when we were talking about chapter 3 and how Charon has the whole fight scene in the Continental, fighting alongside John and just being a utter badass.
Oh yeah,
we were hoping for more of that in chapter 4. But it's just at the same time how the John killing the Elder was kind of the catalyst for the High Table to start going after everyone that's associated with him. The Table killing Sharon was again kind of the catalyst for John to continue trying to continue getting his revenge.
Yeah, and for Winston to sort of figure out something in his life, because they have that great moment of the such is life, and that whole idea where Winston is still not quite there yet, but Sharon already has hit that spot. Like he's already there, and you hate that has to be the catalyst, but that's what pushed Winston over the edge.
Yeah.
So, but just remembering Lance Reddick, and the dude was astounding. He was just a fantastic actor, funny as all get out. He was hilarious. And at least we've got all of his work, because man, he was good in everything he was good in everything he was ever in.
Yeah.
I did a little happy dance when Clancy Brown came on screen as the Harbinger, because just Clancy Brown all the time. Put him in everything. I don't care.
Yeah.
He's so good.
I mean, even when he was like in the one episode of The Mandalorian as the devil looking alien race. I don't remember what they're called, but it's like even in that he just elevates it.
Mhm.
And I was also really excited to see him as the Harbinger. Also, random little tangent. I still love how everyone just has a title.
Yeah.
Whereas
And-
like the only reason why like we have the manager or why we have Winston and Sharon known as by their real names is because John is so close to them.
Yeah.
But to everyone else, they're the manager and the concierge.
Yep.
And it's like, and then you have the Harbinger, you have the Marquis, even though he calls himself nobody, I believe he's credited as the Tracker.
Yep. Yeah. What I like too,
yeah.
and they did this in chapter 3 with the Adjudicator, is I love the fact that they are not referred to. A, they're not referred to by a name, but B, Clancy Brown isn't referred to as the Harbinger. When he walks into the Continental,
Oh yeah.
he says a Harbinger is here to see you. So the cool thing about that is there's more than just this one, but for one of however many to command that much respect and that much fear tells you a lot too. Like that's a great way to make your character just seem like, oh, whoa, like this is just a Harbinger, and he's got Winston and the concierge like on pins and needles. And Clancy Brown, you mentioned him in Mandalorian. Go all the way back to Highlander. Go to
Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption. He's so good as Captain Hadley in that. He's funny as all get out as Mr. Krabs. Like you forget sometimes that he's Mr. Krabs. Like he's that good. He's a great voice actor. He's got the voice. He can do that. Like Mr. Krabs is such a silly voice for him to do, but then there's a moment in this, and I captured it, where he gets real serious for a second with the Marquis, and it's just like, ooh, man, I don't want you disappointed in me, because I'll just shrink into a tiny little ball, and just plus he's an imposing figure. He has certain actors, you know how this goes. Certain actors, just as they get older, they just look cooler. Like Clancy Brown was always
one of them.
Yeah, Clancy Brown always looked great. Like he always had a good look to him. And I mean, Captain Hadley is just an awful character in terms of like a person. Well, amazing performance. But you look at that Clancy Brown, and then you look at the current day Clancy Brown, where he's letting his hair get a little long, he's letting the gray go and the gray beard, and it's just like, that's just a cool looking dude, you know?
Yeah.
He just pulls that look off so well. So yeah, again, it's like Fishburne, not a ton of screen time, but commands it when he's on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not just his performance, but also the character as well, because he has such authority, and he's almost to a certain degree an advisory role to the Marquis as well, and you know, he's just plays it up in that. I was very impressed with his performance as well. I was glad to see him in it.
We've mentioned the Marquis a couple times. The Marquis, played by Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah. Pretty much from the word go, as soon as he came on the screen and started talking, I wanted to punch him. Which is exactly the point.
I think my first line of him is Skarsgård is just good. He's just slimy and menacing. And as the movie goes on, you get to learn more and more about him in terms of how ambitious he is, but how cowardly he is at the same time. Like he wants to move up, but he very rarely does anything himself. He gets people to do it for him. But there were also some very small moments that took the performance from me in watching it from this is a great bad guy and a great performance by Skarsgård to this is like next level. And one of them was when he's in the stable, when the tracker comes up and he says, you know, who are you? And the tracker responds with nobody. And there's a quick moment before he breaks into the line, which a lot of people are going to remember the part where he says, you know, coyness is a pathetic trade. and he talks about all that. But there's a moment right before that when he says nobody, where you just get this tiny little eye roll right before he turns of this like, oh, we're going to do this game. Okay. And then he turns on the menace. And I was like, that right there. And then there's another moment later on towards the very end where he tries to do the tropey, you know, don't forget about your daughter. Remember your daughter. And Donnie Yen's character tells him to F off. And there's, again, that very slight moment of what I read as, you know what, that's fair. And then he walked away. Like, just that little bit of recognition of, like, I deserve that. And it's those things that took that performance, because he's so good throughout the movie. In every scene, you're right. You just want to punch him. You just want to drag him down a gravel road by his face.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even like what he says necessarily. It's just his demeanor and how he presents himself and how he says it to people.
Yes,
that just vomits pretentiousness. And that's is a point for his performance. The fact that he's able to exude that so well that just by watching him makes me want to inflict physical injury to that character. The character, mind you, not the actor. Character.
Right. No, Bill Skarsgård is a sweetheart by all accounts. Everything I've seen, every interview I've seen with him, he just seems like he's a really great, like, very, very cool person. But man, when he gets into a character like this, because this character, the Marquis, is looking down his nose at everyone. It doesn't matter who it is, everyone. And I think also for an American audience, whether or not you think this is a good thing or not, having that character also be French, I think, is a very shorthand way to, like, make American audiences be like, ooh, wow, he's extra pretentious, because we just have this thing of thinking of French people as being pretentious. Which, you know, fair or not, I don't necessarily think that, but, like, I can see where that would go. But he plays it just with this, like, his just chin up, looking down his nose at everybody, talking down or talking at everyone. And it's just so, like, Bill Skarsgård, this is the same guy that played Pennywise. Like, that's some good range for playing villains to play, because Pennywise is such a different type of character, and he can have so much fun and chew a lot of scenery, because he's definitely chewing up the scenery in this, and plus, like, they just nailed it with all of his costuming and like his look
that just exemplifies the pretentiousness, how, like, even, like, some of his suits just have, it's very subtle, but a lot of his suits, especially in the later part of the movie, have, like, almost a glitter to them.
There's
like a
shimmer.
shine to them. It's like,
plus he's tall and he's like rail thin, and so he's got this very angular thing going on, and he just looks, he's in these very, very tailored suits. And it's just, it works. It works so well. And his performance is just dripping with grit and grime, but in this, like, refined way the whole time. It's really, really good. I loved every moment he was on screen, and he got the death that he deserved. And the death happened for him. We'll get to it in the scene, but it was quick, it was over, and that's it. And that's what that character deserved. There doesn't need to be the long, drawn out, like, we talked about in chapter 3 with Zero, and how that whole thing played out where Zero's the fanboy, and they have all these moments, and then they have that long fight, and that fight goes on and on and on and on. And then it ends, and they have their sit down, and they're talking afterwards before John gets up to walk away. And, like, that's what that character deserved. And because Zero was just such a fanboy of John, but he also was like, but I can be the guy that kills John Wick. Whereas the Marquis doesn't like John at all, is not like, he doesn't care, and so he doesn't deserve from the audience any kind of emotional connection to his death. It's just boom, over and done. So that worked, I think, really well. Donnie Yen is Kane. All right.
Yep.
I say this a lot, and I'm sounding like a broken record, but man, Donnie Yen in anything, I don't care. Like, I've yet to see a movie with him where I haven't liked him. But this is the second time he's played a blind character in the last few years.
Yep, I have that note too.
Which I knew he was in the movie. I didn't realize his character was going to be blind. And when the scene started out with him, the first time we see him, he's got that watch open, and I'm noticing the way he's kind of looking around. And I was like, wait, is his character going to be blind in this too? And when he stands up with his cane, I was like, they're going to, okay. But, he's just, like, how do you go from, if you're a director, if you're Chad Stahelski and you're making this movie and you're coming off the back of John Wick Chapter 3 and the choreography and the fighting with Mark Dacascos as Zero, it's like, where do you go from there? Well, okay, you've got a very few choices, and one of them is Donnie Yen.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like, Donnie Yen just brings, again, a lot of character and a lot of heart and a lot of gravitas to what he's doing, because he's a good actor. He really is a good actor that also happens to be a phenomenal martial artist. And boy, that whole first fight with the two of them is just unreal. It just keeps going.
Yeah, and also, like, again, more glass. So it also becomes a game of, okay, which glass is bulletproof and which one's going to break?
Exactly.
Or more specifically, which one is John going to get thrown through?
Yeah, no doubt. I did read that originally in the script, the character's name was something like a Shang or Chang, and they were going to have him have, like a Mandarin collar on his shirt and all this stuff. Yeah. And Yen didn't like it because he felt like it was just too Asian stereotypy. So he went to Stahelski and talked about it, and they rewrote the character, and they called him Kane. And I like all of that because I don't need him to be the Asian stereotype at all. Like, we just don't need that. It's the character is much more impactful if he's just another person in this world. And in this case, he happens to be blind in the world. And you don't get the full backstory of that, which I also like. Because, again, we've talked a lot about this was the first of the John Wick films to not have, is it Derek Kolstad, I think is his name? Derek Kolstad, who wrote the original. He did not work on the script for this. It's just, he's credited as a writer because the characters of John Wick and such were created by him. But he was so good at setting up and doing that kind of world building stuff that we've talked about. And this is some more of that, where you've got a character like Kane, who we learn has a history with John, has a history with other assassins, and not just a history, but like close history.
A friendship with John. They're frequently call each other friends.
Yes.
So, and that goes to show you what kind of business this is too. The fact that, like we were saying with in Chapter 3, how Zero was a fanboy for John, and the only reason why he was even trying to kill John was because he was ordered to, basically. And that's also the same for Kane. The only reason he's doing this is out of obligation to the table.
Yeah.
But otherwise, he's a close friend of John's.
Yeah. And I like that. And then he's blind, and we don't get the exact story of how or why, but we get hints to it, especially that hint at the end where he's like, they took your eyes, and he goes, they didn't take my eyes, I gave them. Which now it's, that immediately sets off my brain of like all the questions. Why did you give them? How? What was the reasoning behind that? Was it because of your daughter? Was this before your daughter was born? What happened? Like, I want to know. Tell me, damn it. And that's good. Like, I like a movie that does that. So, but like, to have the conflicted killer is always a trope, right? Like the guy who it's not personal, but in this case, it really isn't personal. And it's that trope of, I don't want to do this, but I have to protect my daughter. But he's also at the same time kind of got this underlying hope, maybe, or idea that maybe John and I can work out something that'll get sort of everybody what they want. Like, we're that good that we can maybe pull that off. And even to the point of, if like the Marquis sets it up so that John can't make the duel at the end. And like, he's trying everything he can to stop him from getting there on time, because if he doesn't get there on time, it's an automatic forfeit. And Kane, you would think, would maybe want that, because then it's an automatic win for him and he doesn't have to do anything. But no, he can't have that be the thing, because he needs John to hopefully get out from underneath the Marquis's thumb. And so he ends up showing up to help him get up the stairs and get there on time, which that whole sequence.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
Getting through a few more of these. Here, Hiroyuki Sanada as Koji Shimazu. Again, does the character need to be in the film? No. Does it further the story along? Not really. But what it does give us is it gives us an anchor point for John. Another one of these people that actually kind of helps Kane in a way. So it sort of helps Kane's story, because Koji and Kane knew each other. Just like they were friends, just like John. They were like, the three of them were friends. And Koji is so honor bound that he's not going to give up, and Kane can't give up. And it's sort of, that was kind of a turning point for Kane in terms of like, am I doing the right thing type of thing. Plus, Sanada in a movie, when I say gravitas, like that scene of him walking through his hotel and just everybody bowing to him, and like the guys, all the Yakuza looking guys are sitting around there drinking, and they immediately get up like they're going to do something, and he just one hand and they sit right back down. And I'm like, he's an actor that commands respect when you see him on screen. Yeah.
And actually, I saw in the trivia that supposedly he was actually originally supposed to be Zero in Chapter 3.
Yeah, and he couldn't do it because he was doing Avengers.
Yeah, because he was in Endgame. And granted, he was only in there for like one scene in Endgame.
Yeah, he's in Endgame for like a minute.
Yeah, and then he was killed by Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was originally supposed to be Zero, and because he had to turn that role down, that's why he basically just automatically got this role in Chapter 4.
Yeah.
It would have been a very different, I think it would have been a very different dynamic if he was Zero, though. I do think that I'm terrible with names.
Mark Dacascos.
Yes. I do think he was the right choice for that role.
He was, because while I love Sanada, and I think that him in Chapter 3 would have been really cool, it does change that dynamic, because now you can't really have him be, he has to be like reverentially respectful of John Wick in a different way than Zero is like. Zero is like the little brother or little cousin that just thinks like, oh, you're so cool and I want to be like you. Whereas Sanada, being the same age or older than Reeves, especially as he plays a lot older, it's hard to have that youthful exuberance of like fanboyishness.
Yeah.
It would have been very different.
Yeah, it would have been much more stoic respect, rather than, I think, having the almost childlike fanboying. It really worked for that dynamic. I think
absolutely
that was the right choice ultimately. But
and it gave you that
it's
right
good to see
amount
him in this.
Oh yeah, and plus it gave Chapter 3 that right amount of humor that it needed, just that little bit of levity in there. But Sanada's so good in this, and he's another one of those characters that you're like, I want more of him. And so many of these characters, you could do movies just on them. Like you could have a whole movie on Koji, or a whole movie or series of movies about Kane or the Bowery King, or any of them.
Or even the Harbinger, like, because he has what made him the Harbinger? Like, was he in a previous situation similar to John? That's why he had to sacrifice his finger, or there's enough mystery and inferred world building in this series that you could just go off on a tangent with any character and be really interesting side story.
Yep, absolutely. The last two I want to mention are Shamir Anderson as Tracker, aka Nobody. I'm not super familiar with him. I liked him. He's another one of those characters where, like, did he have to be part of this movie? Not really. Like, quite honestly, the movie could exist without him, and it's not going to change the narrative of what's going on with John. but it did make for some interesting pieces. And again, it's more world building, and it's another character you could spin off if you want to.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the type of stuff when I'm talking about, like, does it need to be in here? For me, it's like, if you're a fan of these movies, you like having that stuff in there. It's like watching the extended edition version of The Lord of the Rings, where if you're a fan of that world and of those movies, it's kind of that more is better, and you're just fine with more in these little bits. If it's not your type of thing, then it feels just like tacked on and bloated and doesn't need to be there. So the tracker is a character that adds flavor, but isn't necessary for the movie to exist. But he does give us kind of an outside perspective. He's just in it for money, and he's got his dog. And if there's one thing we know about John Wick movies, there's going to be a dog involved somewhere. Somebody's going to try to hurt the dog, and that ain't going to go well.
And they're going to regret it.
They very much are.
They're going to regret that. Yeah.
So it was just one of those where it's like, I loved that. And he, too, had an arc. Like, he started off the movie.
Yeah.
And he's definitely just in it for the money, just going to find him. But he earns a respect for John. It's sort of, he's the outsider who doesn't really know John, doesn't have that reverence for him like a lot of other people do. But he figures out by the end of the movie that, no, this dude is like more than he seems, and he's not just a payday. And plus, he shot the guy that tried to shoot his dog. So
yeah, that's the important part. But yeah, I like how his arc. I like his character because, he starts off. He just sees John Wick as a payday, but even the way he goes about that, I thought was interesting. How he doesn't just immediately go after John like everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
He actually becomes kind of a pseudo ally to him.
Yeah.
In order to raise the bounty up so he can get a better payday.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually really kind of cool. And then, eventually he does actually become a legitimate ally to John, mainly because of the dog. But I did like that arc and how he wasn't just a straight up assassin trying to kill him. He had like other motives to doing the things he did.
And he's someone that gets to that point with John without having a history with John either.
Yeah.
He doesn't know John already. They're not friends. They never worked together. It's not even like Common in Chapter 2, who had a history with John, but then also did want to kill him. Like, this was just a guy who was literally like, I'm seeing money, I'm seeing dollar signs. But to your point, very smartly, he's like, but I'm going to play this right and juice the price up a little bit. And then by the time he gets to the end, he's like, no, you know what? This guy ain't so bad, and I'm going to help him out. And I liked that. And the last one is Scott Adkins as Killa. If you're not familiar with Scott Adkins, he is your, and I hate saying this because it sounds derogatory, but B-movie star. He's an action movie guy. He is in, if you've seen an action movie with any kind of martial arts work or stunt work in it, he's probably been involved either as a small character or in the stunt crew. And it doesn't matter if it was, direct to video, I think like Undisputed, if you remember those movies where there were boxing and mixed martial arts in prison. He did those. He's done all these direct to video stuff, but all the way up to he was the stunt double for X-Men Origins Wolverine for Ryan Reynolds. He was actually the Deadpool at the end of the movie. He played Deadpool at the end there. But that's Scott Adkins.
Okay.
Dude is just shredded. He is a phenomenal martial artist. And they put him in a gigantic fat suit.
Yeah.
And he just hams it up. And it's so good. Because my only complaint with Adkins ever is he was like, if you took Steven Seagal and you made him not a complete dick with a little bit more acting ability, that was, to me, for a long time, that's who Scott Adkins was. Now, he's gotten much, much better over the years. I think he's a better actor than I used to give him credit for. But he always...
He was really good in this.
Yeah, he always felt a little stiff to me early on, but his acting has improved so much. but he was the guy. He was like Michael Jai White. You cast them because of their look and because of their martial arts abilities, and the acting comes second. And both of them, I think, have gotten better at acting as their careers have gone on. And here, he gets to spend the first like 60% of his screen time just sitting there in that fat suit, and it is hilarious. He's so good in that scene. He's just having a blast.
Yeah, and oh man, I really want to get to these set pieces because they're so good.
Yes.
But,
well, let's start with that one in Berlin in his club, right? Because Atkins, we started off and we get the whole card game scene, and like it's really good and it's funny and it's bordering on kind of Tarantino-ish thing going on where like everybody's quippy and they've all got their own angle to play and all that, and then it becomes the set piece, and it's one of those where it just keeps going, and every time you think you've hit the end of that scene, another like rotation of the scene will come around and keep going. And plus to watch Scott Adkins fight in that fat suit was amazing.
Yeah,
because he moves so well with it, but those first couple of punches he throws, you can tell it's somebody who knows how to throw a punch. And when you put him in a fat suit like that, what I'm thinking immediately is like Kingpin in the Marvel comics.
Yeah,
where it's like, oh, that's like getting hit by fists of concrete. Like,
yeah, and that's one thing that I really appreciated about this whole sequence, because it really subverts expectations by the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you start into it, you know, he's got this guy in a fat suit, he's got an inhaler, he's got a bunch of henchmen. It's like, okay, he's going to run away and keep throwing henchmen at John, and once he's cornered, he's going to be a coward and everything. It's going to be that. It's like, no. He gets to the end of this, and he starts just flat out overpowering John Wick.
Well, and it's great, too, because when he's running away, he runs away like a big fat guy. He runs like somebody that would be the size of that person in that fat suit, where, you know, it's just, it's not a waddle, it's running, but you can only move so well at that size. And so he looks like that, and he gets shot in the butt, and there's the whole joke where he's like, he's grabbing that, and he's like, you shot, But you're right. He gets cornered, turns around, and he just unleashes hell, and he hits him.
Yeah.
And they put the sound mix for those hits was they took a cue from Indiana Jones, right? And it just sounds like sacks of wet cement hitting a wall.
Yeah.
And there was like even just a tiny little bit of camera shake when he hit him, where you can feel that impact. And you know, that's when you realize, oh, that's a fat suit, sure, but like that character is supposed to be just solid. And he starts throwing kicks, and he doesn't give up, and John's just got to when he finally dispatches him. Oh man, my note was like, oh, he fell on his head. Like,
yeah. So one other note that I have in here as well is because they're just during that fight, John also falls like 50 feet onto concrete. So I wrote the note. Let me find it in here.
Hits so hard too.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote the note somewhere here that he's because one joke I keep on making whenever someone dies from a fall is that they have a fatal case of gravity poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
And I referred to it as over the years, Johnson must have developed an immunity to gravity poisoning if it's iocane powder.
Yeah.
Because this dude it does not affect him. He takes so many falls.
He just over time he kept falling from higher and higher heights. And you're right, he just tempered his body to be used to that.
Yeah. He drops onto a pillar, you know, on his back, and then just falls flat on the concrete, and you're just like, okay, that was mildly inconveniencing. I think I'll keep fighting.
Yeah.
And then Killa drops on the stairs just on his head.
You
just hear that crunch.
Yeah, you hear that crunch, and you know he's like 4 inches shorter when he hits that. Like, it just jammed his whole spine, and it's so that sickening crunch that you get. And then I guess the first take where Keanu's supposed to pull the gold tooth out, he like grabbed his lip and pulled on that. And so they did the second take is what was in the movie, but that sort of helped inform Scott Adkins to have like just that goofy face that he had,
That just stare.
and that stare the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, but man, that was and again, like, all of the set pieces in the movie are different. We don't get repetitive stuff. We've seen in the John Wick series, we've seen fights in clubs, right? First two movies had fights in clubs. We've seen fights in clubs with pools and water and all that kind of stuff going on. But something about this one felt different than those. In some of the way that they shot it, in the way that, like, people were reacting, or in this case, not reacting.
Like, that's another note I have in here is I think the developers need to upgrade the NPC AI in the simulation. No one ever reacts to anything.
Either that, or there was just, it just makes you question how much ecstasy was in the bloodstreams of all those people. Where
probably,
like,
a lot.
There's just like no reaction to the bedlam that's going on whatsoever. Like, John is fighting guys with axes and shooting people, and they're all just dancing in the waterfalls. So it is one of those where, as this movie series went on, yes, you got to park your brain a little bit more each time, but it's because it's not our world. It's a heightened version of our world. It's a different. It's a parallel universe, and so I'm fine with parking my brain for those things, because then we get the Paris. Well, okay, so yeah, let's talk about the Paris one. The car chase that turns into an extended fight scene in the roundabout.
Yes,
because that scene. It's a car chase. John, how many cars does John Wick get hit by in that scene alone?
If I had to guess, approximately all of them.
Yes.
To the point where one of my other random notes are the true villains to John Wick are cars and stairs.
Yeah. Really? Basically, that's what it is.
Not the assassins or anything, just cars and stairs.
Yeah.
Those are,
Yeah, because we get the what leads up to this scene is the Warriors style radio announcer who comes over the radio that all the assassins, and apparently every assassin in Paris listens to at the same time. But basically telling them all right, John Wick, open season, go get them, boys. Like, that's basically what she's saying.
In code, but yes.
And so we start off
veiled code.
Yeah, and we start off on the street, and he just immediately fighting people in the middle of the street and getting hit by cars, and they're getting hit by cars, and doors getting ripped off. We had one of my favorite stunts, and I'd love to see the behind the scenes of how they did it, is the doors ripped off the car. He's lost his pistol. And which
is a special pistol, mind you.
Yes. We had a whole scene where he was given that by the Bowery King, so this is one he wants to get back.
Yeah.
And he drives the car, leans out the window to grab the pistol off the ground while pulling a power slide, kind of drift, and then uses that to shoot at people. And it's all one shot, and it's all, from what I could tell, it's Keanu doing it.
Yeah.
And it just looks so
impressive, good. And what's even more impressive is he doesn't, like, if you have the gun on the street, he doesn't, like, go around it to pick it up. If you actually watch it, the gun comes up from underneath the car.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't see the gun when he's going for it, but he just is able to go down. It's like, okay, it should be right here.
Yep.
And grabs it off the ground.
He instinctively knows where that thing is going to be. He's that good. It's just,
Yeah.
And then it's a chase, and then we get to, oh, God, what is the arch called? I want to say it right.
Arc de Triomphe.
Yes. And
I don't know if I say it right, but...
And the big roundabout, and he goes in and immediately starts driving the wrong way, and we get the little game of chicken, and then it's that extended scene. And you can tell, like, okay, they didn't actually shoot the action sequence there. They did,
but a little bit of green screen looking effect to it, but they kind of had to.
Yeah.
With that many cars
around. They were able to use footage as well as, like, CG reconstructions, similar to I think the tech that they used in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol to create the Kremlin, because in the opening of that movie, they didn't shoot anything at the Kremlin in the opening of that movie, and the Kremlin explodes. And similar thing I think they did here, where they got, like, LiDAR and all sorts of stuff like that, and were able to recreate the Arc. But They shot a lot of it. I want to say it was Berlin, maybe probably like a airport runway or airfield somewhere where they had big wide open spaces.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So you can get a little sense of that, but at the same time, there's a lot of real cars driving around there too. There's a lot of CG. There's a lot of Compton cars, but there's a lot of real cars and stunt drivers and things happening, and it's this controlled chaos that is mind-bending. It's so much fun to watch, and it like a lot of the other set pieces in this, you're just like, oh, I'm so tired now.
Yeah,
It wears you out, but it's
this is
in a good way.
Yeah, and this is where we have that drift scene where like we mentioned, both cars are gone from the car, or both doors are gone from the car, so you can clearly see inside. It's Keanu, driving with one hand, drifting around these two other cars while shooting. The amount of training he must have had to go through to get this, because it's not a short scene either. It's at least several seconds.
Oh yeah,
of him just straight doing this is impressive, and like goes to show his dedication to this kind of stuff too.
Listen, whatever the stunt drivers got paid for this movie, it wasn't enough. And I'm sure they got paid decent. And I know that Keanu gave, like, all of the stunt guys, he made them custom shirts. But he also gave his personal stunt team, like, Rolex watches at the end of filming.
Yeah.
Like, Rolex Seamasters or something. But those stunt drivers, for that scene alone, the stunt driving that was done was just top notch. Like it was so good in a controlled space, because oftentimes for me what makes a really good car chase in a movie, in a car action sequence, is scope and scale. When they like the car chase towards the end of Ronin, one of the things I love about it is it takes place over so much space, and it changes locations, and the environment changes as they're going, and they go from tunnels to bridges to against the flow of traffic and all that. This all takes place in the roundabout around the Arc de Triomphe.
Yeah.
And it just, like, it feels so much more than it is. And I love that.
Yeah.
On top of action, like fighting, like literal choreography in the street that they're comping in with extra, like, they're doing the choreography and they're stunt driving around it, and they're comping in extra stunt drivers into that, and all the visual effects that go on with that, and these guys are just fighting in the middle of the street. And you have to wonder, like, again, this is Paris. There isn't a cop to be seen while all this is going on, because apparently police don't exist in this world.
Yeah, or at least they know better not to get involved with this kind of stuff. Because it's like they're going to get to the scene. It's like, okay, I guess we just die needlessly.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's about it.
But like John is there, and you got the tracker there, and his dog, and that shot of the dog running over the tops of the cars was so good. And like all the action sequences in these movies, there is some quick cutting involved, but for the most part, the majority of it, wide shots, long takes, lots of action in camera in the take, or lots of action in the take and visual effects that make it more impactful.
Yeah, and also one other thing we forgot to mention, the main, like, bad guy, the kind of the leader of the Marquis guys, he's never actually they never actually say his name during the film, but he's credited as, I'm going to pronounce it, Chidi.
Yes.
This is another example of how he is a monster. To a certain degree, because he's got the dog on his arm at one point, and just like literally throws the dog in front of a car that bounces off of the windshield and somehow survives, because of course not everyone can die apparently. And just like, you at that point, like even earlier, when actually during the Osaka scene, the first instance that we have of showing that he's a monster is he just straight up murders an unarmed woman because she's there, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just like, okay, we want this guy dead.
And the movie just kept hammering that fact home.
Yeah. Which comes up again later in the next set pieces as well. But Yeah, just for the roundabout scene, just it just keeps on going and going, and that's one thing that I especially like about the last hour of the film is, to me, it does not feel like an hour. It's like it feels like 20 minutes to me because it's just so fast paced and
Because
just so much action.
yes, and I think a lot of that is because the action is so well done that the pacing of the action, it never feels like a slog. It's long, and you definitely, like I say, you're exhausted by the end of it, and you feel the length of it, I think. But it's sort of you feel the length of it like if you were doing, say, like a long workout where you're tired at the end, but in the moment that your adrenaline is up as you're watching that scene because of all the action that's going on. Not to mention the thing with the apartment. I think it was the next sequence.
Yeah, which somehow ramps it up even further.
So if the stuff in the roundabout wasn't enough for you, now we go to this next sequence, and it's in a 7-room apartment. And this is where I say, like, the movie, they keep upping the ante and they keep giving us something new visually. I am a sucker for a long take, and we've had long take action sequences in this where there's like a minute, 2 minutes unbroken of just fighting, and to think of filming that is insane to me, because if one person messes up, you got to reset, and that's not a quick, easy thing to reset. But then they built this set, and they built it with tall ceilings, and they had a spider cam setup, and you go from ground level up the wall to a top-down view, and we're following John room to room. And I also love movies that do that. The first Conjuring did it. James Wan in The Conjuring did this shot, and I think he did it in Malignant too, that followed somebody from room to room in a building like that. And I love that because it's not something you see all that often, and it feels so weird and foreign. And for this movie to do that for an action sequence that was inspired by a video game and feels a little bit like a video game, but never looks like one.
Yeah.
And it just
by
keeps
Hong Kong Massacre.
Yeah. And it's another one of those where it just keeps going. And when you think that you've seen enough of this scene, it's got more to show you. And there's even a point where we've transitioned up, we've done the top down, we've done that for a while, and then we cut back to normal level, and you think, oh, cool, that was a really cool shot. And then they go back to it, and they're like, well, we got more for you. And I don't know if you read this or not, it was almost cut from the movie. That scene almost didn't make the movie because people were seeing the unfinished version of it, and they didn't think it punched enough. But then when they saw it with the dragon's breath ammo,
which is another element we forgot to mention, that basically all the shotguns are firing, like phosphorus bullets out, basically.
Yeah, lighting stuff on fire.
Fireworks.
Yes.
Yeah.
But once they saw that added in, they understood kind of the punch, and it does add that extra level, because those rounds hit, and whatever they hit burst into flames, and so it helps to keep your eye tracked on the action. And once again, though, you know where everything is and everyone is at any point, even with the camera in this odd position and rotating and changing. You still you're able, and everything's following John, and it's just what's cool about it too, from an audience perspective, is most of the time in an action sequence, even if you've got wide shots, you're seeing nothing more than what the actor's going to see, right? Unless you cut away from the actor's perspective or cut away from a shot that has the actor in it, whatever you're seeing, he's probably able to see, or she's probably able to see. The cool thing with this top down is we get to see more than John does, so we can see these enemies moving around and these bad dudes coming at him from different angles, and to see the way that all plays out and how John deals with that as a character, it's just it's such a cool and innovative look to an action sequence that I personally can't think of having seen in a movie before in that way, and certainly for that long.
Personally, for me, which is redundant to say personally and for me. But anyway, uh, this one scene pretty much made the movie for me.
Yeah,
Just again, like you were saying, we don't really get the same kind of fight sequence twice in these movies.
no,
This elevates it further by literally elevating the camera.
yeah,
Being able to see action, not just what John can see, but everything around him. And it's impressive because this, we were mentioning this being a long take. I actually watched the time while I was watching it earlier today. It's almost 2 minutes long straight of just pure action sequence. And again, it's like if anyone messes up, they have to reset everything from the start. 2 minutes might not sound like a long time, but for an action sequence this intense, with so much choreography, with so many moving parts, with so much just stuff going on that needs to be so precise, being able to do it for 2 minutes straight is amazing.
it really, really is. And it's a different, because we're pulling the camera back even further than like a wide shot of 2 or 3 people fighting or John taking on a room full of bad guys. We're pulling the camera back that much more. It's giving us a new perspective on all of this action and kind of removing us from it a little bit and making us pull back from it so it can keep the intensity up without it feeling draining. Because we've just had a very intense, up close action sequence around the Arc de Triomphe, and now we go to this and we're able to pull back and keep that in. That intensity keeps ratcheting up, but we're able to sort of relax and just take it all in and see something that we really haven't seen before. Because then we're going to roll into yet another one we'll get to in a second here. But like, this whole scene just goes on and on and on and on, but it just looks so cool. And it definitely needed that extra layer of something ridiculous like the Dragon's Breath shotgun ammo.
Yeah.
Including one guy even
also
getting fully set on fire, which is like your one cut in the whole thing. They had a cut there.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's basically seamless. And honestly, if you don't know that cut is there when that guy gets lit on fire in the kitchen, you don't see it. It's so well done.
Yeah.
But it just, I just loved it. And I loved like all the parts to it going on.
Yeah. And the thing is, not only is John Wick impressive in this whole thing, the tracker is impressive in it as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And it's just this one move that is just like such, for whatever reason, that's just the coolest move, is when he's starting to go through and he gets knocked, the rifle gets knocked out of his hand, and just the pulling up the flak jacket from his backpack, putting that out, having the guns on the vest and everything, and now he's like, okay, I'm ready for more, and just keep on going. I don't know why, but that was just the coolest move to me.
That was yep. And like holding it there for a second and then pulling a pistol off. Oh, that was some rule of cool action right there. Like that just looked awesome.
And it shows this, like, it also, that sequence shows that John Wick isn't the only badass in this world, that there are some other ones, like the tracker's up there too.
Oh yeah.
With his skill and with his dog and everything, like how he's trained it, which is somewhat unfortunate for the people on the business end of the dog in a lot of cases. Let's just say that one of the commands that he has is nuts, and just leave it at that.
That dog was a meat-seeking missile, though. Like, how many times did that dog come flying into frame and hit people like it was shot out of a cannon? Yeah. And it was so good.
But also the scene where he comes out of the dark behind the guy.
The Michael Myers shot where he just appears out of the darkness, and because you hear him.
Yes.
You hear him first. Yeah. And then and then slowly in the background he fades in, and it's just like, oh, this is too good. Like there's a moment we're going to get to here in a second that was almost too much with the dog. Almost, but they earned it. And you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, this whole sequence in the apartment was great, and it's where the tracker figured out that John is not just a payday, and honestly, he's better off because John does rescue his dog, and that's a big
Yeah.
thing, and that is 100% John Wick's character. That he is going to save the dog first because he's got a shot on the tracker who, to this point, he's just trying to kill him. So he's got the tracker dead to rights, but he takes time to shoot the other guy because that guy was going to shoot the dog because
Chidi again.
Chidi is a monster and deserved his fate.
Yes.
And then
Which also he seems to have gotten an immunity to gravity poisoning to a degree as well.
yeah, and cars don't seem to bother
Yeah.
him much. Getting hit by a car, just Chidi's just like, yeah, whatever, I'll shake that off.
Yeah.
And then we get to the final thing. Now, during all of this, mind you, this chase through Paris, through this apartment, leading up to this scene, John is on his way to a duel with the Marquis
Yeah.
that has to take place at dawn, and if he's late, he forfeits.
Yeah.
And it is his way out. It is his final thing because he has invoked some of the old rules to have a one-on-one duel with the Marquis, and if he wins, he gets his freedom. He no longer has any ties to the table. Winston gets the Continental back, all that kind of stuff. If he loses, he dies.
Yeah.
And the Marquis has basically thrown everything, including all the kitchen sinks, at him to try and stop him from getting there on time. And the last thing he has is, as he's coming up to, where is it? You're gonna have to help me out with where they were having their meeting at because, but it's a basilica.
I know it was a church. That was about it.
Sacré-Cœur Basilica.
Yes, that sounds familiar.
And there's 222 steps that lead up to it. And that's the shot that I was talking about earlier when they get to the bottom of that and you hear, like, and it said he's got 222 steps ahead of him. And that was that shot that's 50% John Wick, 50% Keanu Reeves, like, oh, God, we're doing this? Like, what have I gotten myself into? And I'm watching that like, oh, boy. Oh, it's just, you know what's
just
happening.
seeing that and knowing what he has to go through, that just alone made my knees hurt.
Uh-huh.
And
quads and hammies
it's
are
like
just screaming.
It's like I instinctively thought the phrase "stairs, my greatest weakness."
Well, I love this bit of trivia. Fight coordinator Jeremy Marinas thought when faced with the prospect of staging a fight scene on the 222 steps leading up to the basilica was, my quads and hammies are going to kill me. At the same time, he wasn't exactly surprised when director Stahelski presented him with the concept. It's like, of course that's what you want. You want 100 guys falling down the stairs, and you want me to make every reaction and fall different. Of course you do. It was like just another day at work. And so that scene starts off, and he starts off by just walking up the stairs, and he gets partway up, and he gets there, and then all of a sudden all these people show up. And you're like, oh, here comes the fighting. And it's another one of those where it's just shots and flips and judo and all this, and guys flying down the stairs. And amazingly never hitting the center posts on any of those stairs, too, which was pretty impressive. I did read that they did pad some of the stairs, not all of them, but some of them did have padding that then they could, take out and post. But there were a lot of times where guys had to fall on concrete. And on actual stairs. And it was a point of pride for the stunt guys that they had nothing but bumps and bruises. That there was no concussions and no legitimate serious injuries, because a lot of guys fell down a lot of stairs for that scene, including. And go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say another pro tip for all the if you're ever trying to go against John Wick, a pro tip: you should probably pull your gun out before he sees you. That was a very common mistake for a lot of the people in here. Is they walked out in view and then pulled their guns out. Might want to do it the other way around. A little bit of a pro tip there. Anyways.
But and John gets all the way up the stairs, basically to the top, when Chidi shows up and just straight 300 kicks him back down the stairs.
Down all of the stairs.
All of them. He just keeps falling, and it's like, Oh man, and it's a stunt double. I'm pretty certain that most of that was not Keanu Reeves falling, but whoever that was just kept going, and he gets to the bottom, and this was the oh yeah moment of the movie is when he hits the bottom, and then there's Kane, and Kane's like, I need you to get to the top. How long have we got? And he's like 2, maybe 3 minutes. He's like, let's go. And then we get to do basically the whole scene again, going up the stairs with
Kane helping.
With Kane helping, so I'm already in because it's just more Donnie Yen getting to do Donnie Yen stuff. The tracker is now helping. He's got his dog there, and including getting to finally get the final bit on Cheaty with with getting him in a position and then nuts, and that dog dragging that dude by his crotch off the stairs.
Yeah. Before
he gets shot, and then and the moment that almost went too far, but it's one of those where it's like, boy, it feels weird, but I'll allow it. Is the dog peeing on him afterwards?
Yeah,
because it's ridiculous. It's silly. They mentioned at the beginning that the dog is a female, but the dog was raising its leg. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? I'm gonna. You can have that one movie. That's fine.
Cheaty
cool.
made it personal. So
exactly.
So I would allow it too.
So yeah, it's like it's fine. It's fine. It's just that whole. It's once again, it's one of those action sequences that is so well staged, so well choreographed, and it never feels like we get lost. We know where we are on those steps the whole time, because as you're going along, John's just getting more and more tired, and he's falling down. He's fallen down more than one time. He keeps getting up. You're just like, the lactic acid building up in his quads and his hamstrings had to have, like, it would put down a rhino. And then he finally gets to the top, and it's like, that's not the end. Like, he reaches
now he's got to
top,
deal with the actual duel.
And now he's got to do the duel. And the duel was awesome because it's pistols at dawn, right? It's very classic duel, pistols at dawn. And then those pistols they had, I don't know what they were. Like, I could probably look it up, so I'm sure there's somebody that would tell the exact model and modifications that were done to them, but they were just awesome looking. These single shot, whatever the hell caliber bullet those things were, those looked like a long rifle freaking artillery shell. And it's...
One other note that, like, something random I noticed this time through that I would listen, or that I watched, John's firing left-handed.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they get up the stairs, I don't know if this now, if it would really made a difference or anything, but I thought it was a cool little detail. Kane just like takes his sword and just stabs it through John's right hand as they're walking by, and just like, okay, now we're even, and and then they go and do the duel.
Yeah, I love that moment.
I thought that was a cool little detail that he was firing left-handed after that.
Yep, and he's got to shoot left-handed, and so they have their duel, and it's 30 paces, and the Marquis, being the coward that he is, accepts the duel, but then makes Kane act out the duel.
Yeah.
And so pistols, 30 paces, they turn, they shoot, they wing each other, right? They get each other in the arm.
Yep.
And so if they aren't dead, they move in 10 paces and they shoot again. So, and I love how they get to their 30 paces, and then their second comes over with a, this velvet lined tray and the bullet in it, and he gives it to him. And I love Winston's things like, just try to have fun out there. It's so good.
Again, part of the such as life type thing that he's adopted for this chapter is like, just have fun. And like, he starts off just like, isn't this a beautiful sunset?
Because Winston has figured out by this point that he's either going to get everything back or he's going to die, and he just needs to be in the moment right now, and such is life, and he's adopted that. And the loss of the concierge is what puts him there. So we get 30 paces, they wing each other. 20 paces, they wing each other. 10 paces, tension's building up. That's where we get that great moment of, remember, think about your daughter, F off. And 10 paces, and they shoot. But John gets hit, and he goes down.
Yeah.
And here again, this was the long play that it's a gamble, but it's one that paid off, and it feels, that moment in a movie about a con like Ocean's 11 or something like that, where it's revealed the long con that the movie's playing on you, and if it's done well, you're like, oh, that's clever, that's really well done. And if it's poorly executed, you're like, no, come on, really, did we do that? Like, that just feels too much. This was, I think, done well, because John and Kane don't know 100% that this will work, but they know and have figured out the Marquis well enough to guess that he is enough of a coward that he won't do the duel himself, but he's arrogant enough that he will want to finish John off by himself.
Yeah.
And John being down, and the Marquis like, I'll do it. I want the coup de grace. Like, I, as champion or whatever, I invoke that right. And he stands in there by himself and he loads it up. And then that last second, and Winston's like, you arrogant asshole. He never fired. And by the time he said that, John's already shot him. And it's just like, oh, it's the perfect way to take that guy out.
Yeah. And it's potentially a little bit fuzzy in like the actual rules of the duel, how that would apply, but but the fact that it's like, that's the way it had to be done.
Mm-hmm.
If they had shot him and just killed him in any other situation, I mean, that's the whole point of the duel.
Yep.
Is to basically make it like legally binding under the table, so that it's like, okay, with this duel, if John wins, he earns his freedom, and stuff like that. And so,
because by the rules of the duel,
I thought it was so good.
Yeah, by the rules of the duel, they each shoot from 30 paces, they each shoot from 20, and they each shoot from 10. And so by John not firing at 10 paces, he's well within the rules of the duel to still fire. He's not dead.
Yeah.
But because the arrogance of the Marquis, he thinks, well, I've got him now. He's already shot and has no bullet left. I'm going to do the coup de grace. I'm going to finish him off finally. And that's when Winston has to tell him, like, he didn't shoot yet. And boom, he's done. Yeah. And it's just, it's so satisfying and so good in that moment.
And again, how you mentioned earlier, it just happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real lead up to it. Like what you just said was the lead up to this guy getting killed.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, literally the only reaction was the Harbinger going, "Yep, he looks dead."
Well, that's done. All right, boys, have a good one. Puts his hat on and walks away. He's just like, my work's done here.
It's just like, okay. Yeah, it's just like, and that was the only way that basically both John and Kane could get what they wanted.
Uh-huh.
Because just before the Marquis took over from Kane to do the coup de grace, he says, you and your daughter are free.
Yep.
She can't be touched anymore. You're free to go, type of thing. So that's binding.
Yep.
And then John kills the Marquis, which means his thing is binding as well.
Yeah.
The Harbinger, reiterates all this, and then basically it's like, okay, we're done. See ya, and we'll clean this up later.
Yep. I'll file the paperwork. Have a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last note I have for that whole thing was hubris.
Yes. Oh, my hubris will be my undoing. And then we get that wonderful moment, and it brings the whole story full circle because the opening of the first John Wick film is the aftermath of his fight, and he's laying there bleeding out, and he's looking at the video of his wife, and the last thing she says in the video is, we can go home now. And then we get the whole movie, and everything starts. And at this point, John stands up, and he looks at Winston, and he just says, will you take me home? And those are the last words that John Wick speaks before he walks off, and he goes partway down the stairs and sits down, and then he just keels over. And the next thing we get is the Bowery King and Winston in front of his grave next to his wife. I think maybe he says Helen. Helen might be the last word he says, actually.
Yes.
Because he has a bunch of flashes and memories as he's sitting on the stairs. And that's it. And then that ends it, and we get just this little wrap-up of like, well, what's going to happen now? It's like, just go back to doing stuff, and like I get my hotel back, and that's the end of John's story. And you can read it as maybe he didn't die, but it's also fairly definitive that like, I'm pretty sure he's like, if they want to bring him back somehow, they can hand wave it away as like, we quote buried him so that everyone would think that. But
Chapter 5 has been confirmed.
Yeah, I'm curious what they do there. But it's like,
I have so like in regards to Chapter 5, so they have confirmed that they are going to be working on Chapter 5. I have a feeling it will be a sequel. I don't, and it, so they never actually show a body, and it's reasonable to believe that the injuries that he sustained during that last duel were survivable because he has survived those injuries before.
yes.
So it is reasonable to think that they will keep him going. But honestly, what I want I want a prequel. I want John Wick: The Impossible Job, where they go back and show what he had to do to get out of there in the first place. I would love to see that story.
Now, I do know that Keanu Reeves has said he doesn't want to come back to play John Wick unless Chad Stahelski is directing. And that's great. And if they're going to do a John Wick Chapter 5, fine. Can we let Chad Stahelski make Highlander first, please? Can we do the Highlander remake at least? Can we get that? Like, I don't care if Ghost of Tsushima happens or not. Like, it's cool, and I hope that it happens. But, like, he has got 11 upcoming projects on his IMDb page.
Oh, jeez.
And
wow.
Whether it be Rainbow Six, Vice City, Black Samurai, Ghost of Tsushima, but I want, like, can we just have like any of those and then let him go back to John Wick? It would be fine. Because he's now told a 4-part story and a great arc for John. Yeah. And if they never make of Chapter 5, I'm fine with it. Like, honestly, if they never made a sequel to John Wick, I'd have been fine with it.
Which they originally weren't going to.
No,
I mean,
they weren't.
Because the original John Wick was effectively an independent film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the only reason why it got
well.
off the ground in the first place, the only reason it got off the ground in the first place was because of Keanu.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but, and then, so it's like, oh, we got something here. And then they made it continued on. So if I agree though, if this Chapter 5 never pans out, this is a satisfying end to the series.
It really is.
Oh, and I'm kind of hoping that if they do go to a Chapter 5, that the tagline is not "now we're milking it."
John Wick Chapter 5 because it keeps making money.
Pretty much. Oh, because there will be a certain point where it's like, okay, you're turning into the Fast and Furious series now, and we know where that's going.
And there's already so much suspension of disbelief you have to have for the fact that John Wick made it through 4 movies, because there was a YouTube series, and I think it was a Cinefix spinoff, or under the Cinefix label, but it was like, what's the damage? And they would have like a doctor. Or they would go over the injuries that people would sustain in certain movies and how many of those would be lethal. And I think if I remember right, it was like Home Alone 2: Lost in New York would have taken like 7 Marvs to get through that movie.
Oh, jeez.
Because of how many times his character would have sustained like life-threatening injuries. So I'd love to just for the sheer like silliness of it, to have a breakdown of all the injuries John Wick should have sustained in this movie, like all the broken bones and cracked ribs and collapsed lungs and who knows what else, because it's just like it's an ER doctor's nightmare
somehow he would have managed to break like 3 legs, 4 lungs.
It's like this man has been in a body cast for 7 years, just continuously. And yet he's still kicking. But the one thing I do like is no matter what happens to John in any of the movies, every time John Wick gets up, and he does get up, and he gets running, he looks like somebody who just fell down a flight of stairs running.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great. It cracks me up every time. He's got that little
bit of a like sideways hobble for a few steps. And then
he runs. He runs like a man's running on 2 broken ankles and a cracked foot. in his 50s, like just and it looks like it's painful, and I love every second of it. But like, no, this is a satisfying close to that story. If they end up trying to go with more power to them. I'm sure I'm going to watch them, because why not? We did go from something that was very independent and very grounded, and it got more and more ridiculous as it went on. But what they did was they gave us new things we hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And they did so much in terms of just action films and what can constitute a good action film, that I just love that. This is a great series of 4 movies, and it's a cool, fun world to play around in now, because there's the series coming, the Continental. I don't know if that started yet or not.
I have no idea, honestly.
That's supposed to like just take place at the Continental itself and deal with other characters. And there's also what was the other thing was the Ballerina is a spin-off of this. Okay, the Continental from
Lance
the world
Reddick
of John
actually
Wick.
did. Yeah. Lance Reddick actually did record a couple scenes for the Ballerina.
Yes. Yep. Lance Reddick will be in Ballerina. That comes out next year, slated for next year. And the Continental series, I think it's a limited series. I think it's supposed to be later this year.
Cool.
So, but it's such a cool, interesting world to like play around in and follow other characters other than John Wick, because of what they did, and like because we've got even silly stuff like Peter Stormare's character from 2. Go back to him and that whole gang and that group of people, and they're involved, but like they don't want to have anything to do with John Wick anymore, and they said as much. You've got the his family, the Roma.
The Ruska Roma.
Yeah, the Ruska Roma there, like all that kind of stuff. It's just I really enjoy the world that they built in this, and there's so much room for so many characters to be in here. We got to see somebody get taken out with a pencil.
Yep. A pencil did make a return.
Yes, because I had a note for that, with a pencil. I also had, looking at my notes for watching the movie, I had good puppy, really good puppy, don't hurt the puppy, no shoot the puppy, bad, good puppy. So
and also the fact that the tracker, like when they did finally kill Chidi, they're just like, you hurt my puppy.
So okay, we've been going for a while. This is one of the longest episodes I've done yet, but I have to play a couple of these audio clips. This isn't a movie with a ton of quips, but there's some good ones here. And I would be remiss if I don't play it. One of them is,
You hit my puppy.
when he said, you hit my puppy, I was like, oh, thank you. All dogs are puppies.
Yeah.
And anybody who's a dog person, like full 3/4 of dog people are like that, where it's just like, it's my puppy.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know that I always get fake laughs, and good ones. And Fishburne's laugh at the beginning is just, it's a little quiet because the way the audio was with the punch I got in here, but I just love this laugh. It's the end of it. It's that ha at the end.
Yeah.
Because it's that real throaty, like barrel-chested throaty laugh, and then the impact of the punch of John hitting the thing, and then and it just, I love that. It was really, really good. Let's see. Winston finally kind of finding his philosophy.
Such is life.
Yeah, such is life.
Yep.
That's how it is. We've got the Bowery King with his when he brings the suit to Paris.
The latest in ballistic chic. Appropriate for all formal occasions. Weddings, funerals, high table duels.
Gotta love that. Because, as he says,
After all, a man has to look his best when it's time to get married. Or buried.
that's right. Remember that. Loved all that. I got one Clancy Brown because I just like this line.
A man's ambition should never exceed his worth. You would do well to remember that, sir.
That is menacing.
Yeah.
That is voice. That is some voice work. Just, you would do well to remember that. So I'm like, no, I don't want to run into you in a dark alley or a light alley for that matter.
Oh, jeez. Or any alley. Just no.
Just no, none.
Keep state open fields.
Yep. What was this one? I don't even remember what this is.
Remember your daughter.
Fuck off.
Oh. That's what that one was. Well, there's my one for the show.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you've
And
made
I
it
don't
to an
know if-
hour and 45 minutes of this show, we've earned that F-bomb.
Yeah.
But actually, it was such a great moment because it's that tropey thing that happens in every movie like this, and Donnie Yen's just like, no. Yeah. And that had that reaction from Bill Skarsgård, just very, ever so slightly. If you watch it again, watch for it, of just that like, yeah, okay, and then walks away. Like, breaks just a little bit and then comes back to like the looking down his nose. Okay, last one. This is my last clip, but this is a good one. So this is Winston talking to the Bowery King, and it's when they're standing in the rain, and he's explaining like, well, why did the Marquis leave you alive? And I love this line because this is a great one.
Killing a man can turn him into a martyr. Letting him live tells the world he's a coward or a turncoat.
Like, I love that. That's so, because it's so true in this world. Like, in this world of this movie, all you have is your reputation. And by the Marquis not killing Winston, that means Winston is either a coward or a traitor. Which one is he? You don't know. Even though he's neither, in this case, he's painted as that, and that's so much worse than killing him. So I really enjoyed that. It's a little tough to hear with the rain sound, but it's great. Yeah. It's a great moment and a great delivery.
And if I may be so bold, one quote that I was probably one of my favorite quotes of the movie is when they're doing the doing the conditions for the duel, doing like flipping the cards, which I thought that was pretty cool too.
That was an awesome scene.
Yeah. But like at the very end where John was about to leave, he's like, there is no John out there, only John Wick, the killer. And John just turns to him and goes, and he's gonna kill you. And his just expression is like, oh crap.
Ooh, boy.
That's right. That's not a good thing.
No, what have I unleashed? What was I thinking? Yeah.
I
Look,
like that exchange.
I'm sorry. If you are at all a fan of the John Wick movies and you haven't seen this one yet, first of all, why are you listening to us ramble on it for an hour and 45 minutes? But secondly, it's so good. Watch it. It's long, but the movie works and it earns it. It wouldn't work if you didn't have the first 3 chapters didn't set you up for it and didn't deserve this kind of a fourth. I would say, the movie's too long. And look, if you think the movie is too long, I get that. That's fine. I don't think it is, and I think that it's worth sitting through because, as you said, the pacing in it for that last hour, the first hour and a half is a fully contained movie, and it feels like that. But then the action gets ramped up in that last hour, and you really don't feel an hour there, and you're inside of it. When you're done, you're tired. You're like, oh boy, I am as whooped as John Wick is, because they do so much. The way the stunts are done, you feel these impacts. You feel the punches. You feel when they hit, and they roll down those stairs, or they slide down something, or whatever it is. Like, it's just so well done. But it is also such a good showcase of what action films can be when, as we've talked about more than once tonight, but also in the previous 2 chapters, simplify the story. The story is John getting revenge. The story is John's going to kill the Marquis. That's it. That's all that is. Complex characters, complex world. Put all that stuff around it, but we don't need these long bits of like exposition to move a plot along, because that just bogs a movie down. Let the show don't tell, and let the world build itself around it. And that's what Derek Kolstad, Chad Stahelski, Keanu Reeves, and the rest did from the word go in the first John Wick film to this 4th one.
Yeah, it's impressive how they've kept it going throughout the whole series.
To continue to do new things, and yes, they up the ridiculous factor of it, but to continue to do new things that we haven't seen in action films, or certainly haven't seen at the scale and at the length that we're getting some of them here,
Oh yeah.
is impressive. And it really, I mean, now we're getting we're in the era of all the, as we have been for the last few years, of all the John Wick clones, right? The, you know, oh, this is John Wick here. Die Hard did the same thing. Die Hard was this movie 30 years ago, where
Well, even The Matrix was this movie too. It's
Right.
Like for how many years after The Matrix did we hear best fight scene since The Matrix
Mhm.
as an advertising point?
and that's what certain movies will do. And like, you know, Die Hard I like to use as the example because it changed kind of the structure of action movies in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so Die Hard came along, did that, and then we got a lot of those Die Hard clones. The ones that worked understood what made Die Hard work. The ones that didn't were just like, oh, we'll put action inside a small space. Well, that's not all of what made Die Hard work. And then Die Hard, of course, was able to expand that in the third movie, which I think is still quite good, Die Hard with a Vengeance, by expanding it to all of New York City, but still making that feel rather contained by comparison to some other action movies. It never, like, the Die Hard series lost me when they got too big. And
Yeah.
John Wick could have lost me with that, but what works is while we expanded beyond just New York, it always felt like it's still all within this world of assassins. It never went beyond that, and it was never like, it never felt like it was too much. So this is definitely one that is 100% worth watching, and it's going to be hitting streaming services soon. You know it will be, so check it out.
Yeah.
It's worth a rent, though, for sure. Like, to rent it on any of the services right now is absolutely worth it. You just get your popcorn, sit back, and enjoy the carnage, because, whew,
Yeah.
boy, is it good stuff. So, all right. I've had you on a couple times. It's been a couple months, but let people know you've got a podcast, Part-Time Gamers, right? It's still going on.
Indeed. Yep, the gaming podcast for people with full-time lives. We talk about games that you can usually finish in a couple hours or so, or at least get some kind of satisfaction out of in a short amount of time, because we all are, well, most of us have to do a bunch of adulting, which kind of sucks. Eats into game time. So talk about games that you can enjoy in full-time life.
Excellent. And you can find that where? Anywhere you get your podcast would be Part-Time Gamers, but
Yep. I also do the live recordings, usually Sunday nights. We would have technically started about 45 minutes ago, but we're not recording today because of the 4th of July holiday.
Got it.
But normally about 9:15 we start the stream up at twitch.tv. Yeah. Why can I not think? It's right there. Twitch.tv/Searanex.
There you go.
And start the show proper at 9:30 Eastern time.
Excellent. This show records Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Twitch.tv/TV's Travis if you want to hang out and catch the live stream of the show. Comes out as a podcast on Wednesdays, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can always find that feed and any feeds to other shows that I am a part of, whether those were the Days, Gore, or the Let's Watch Highlander that will be coming back at some point, because we're going to watch Highlander the Raven. You can find all of those feeds at tvstravis.com. There's also links to merch there if you want to get a coffee cup or a T-shirt with my logo on it. That's always fun. And honestly, the merchandise, I've gotten bits myself. I'm really impressed with the quality of it. So if you like that kind of stuff, it's there. There's a Patreon link on there, or go to patreon.com/WYHS for Wait You Haven't Seen. For as little as $1 an episode, you can support the show. Supporting in non-monetary ways by just spreading the word, letting people know, get people to listen to the show. There's 223 episodes now that they can listen to. Patrons do get special access in the Discord. There's a link to the Discord on the website, tvstravis.com, but patrons do get special Discord access, and we also do monthly movie catch-ups where we watch a movie from the Wait You Haven't Seen back catalog together. So if it's one that you missed and maybe you skipped an episode, or you listened to the episode and were intrigued by the movie and you want to watch it or watch it again, we can do that there. And I put those to votes and all that kind of stuff, so you can definitely check it. But it's tvstravis.com is the place to check that out. Searanex, thanks so much for being here. This was was awesome to finish the John Wick journey together.
Yeah, at least until 5 comes out at some point.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is, if you say, "Hey, you're welcome back anytime," I will hold you to that. And this is the result. So
Hey, you're on you are on my short list of those that like I can count on to be like, hey, you wanna do an episode and you're gonna have something good. And there's no way I could do an almost 2-hour episode of this show unless it was a conversation that I wanted to have. And it doesn't feel like we've been talking for 2 hours. So
yeah.
it's been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh man, I love being here.
And definitely check out Part-Time Gamers. It's a lot of fun. I'm working on figuring out some game to come and talk about because I want to come back on. I had fun before.
And I'd love to have you back on there too. It's a matter of timing and what game to talk about.
Yep. We'll figure that out. But next week, I've got Kurt. VO by Kurt is coming back. He is getting me to watch, for the first time, 12 Angry Men. Yes, I've never seen 12 Angry Men. I know that I am supposed to, as a film buff, have seen 12 Angry Men. I haven't. And when I mentioned that at one point, Kurt immediately jumped on that and said, you're watching that. You're watching it with me. I want to talk about it. Let's do it. So that's happening. And then the week after that, Phil Keating is coming back. And we're going to watch one of his favorite movies ever that I also haven't seen, which is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And I can't wait to check that out because quirky Wes Anderson movies are fun. And somehow I just never saw that. So that's what's coming up the next couple of weeks as we inch ever closer to Cage-a-Palooza 2023. And you're going to love this one this year. We got some fun stuff coming. So until then, until next week with Kurt and 12 Angry Men and the ever-approaching Cage-a-Palooza, Searanex, thank you for being here. Everybody get out, enjoy your movies. Stay home, enjoy your movies. However you want to do that. Let's be excellent to each other. It's been Wait You Haven't Seen.
$9mm pit viper.
How'd you get this?
I know a guy who knows a guy who shot a guy.
I love that.
That's great.
Oh, that line was too good. I know.